Okay, we've got a 2001 Mercedes ML320. I think it's similar to the ML430. Problem is, we've got to replace the fuel pump, which is the access for it is underneath the floor here, under the passenger, the rear seat behind the driver. So you got to remove the seat. This is a 60-40 split. I am working on pulling out the 60 side. It's really tricky. The hardest part is getting these covers off. There are some, if you get access to the back, there are these holes with these little squares in them that have the snaps on the inside. You release those from the back, and then you push the whole thing forward to release the front tabs from underneath the front of the seat, and then the whole piece comes out the back. Similar with the side trim pieces and so forth, same story. Once you get those out, then the back of the seat is exposed, and the brackets, and there's these star washers, star nuts. You need a socket for them, which I don't have, so I'm making do with a with an 12.11 millimeter, and it seems to be working fine so far. So anyways, that's the step I'm at now. I'm going to just keep pausing this, and I'll splice it all together for you later on. Okay, I've got all of the hardware out. Looks like we have 10 of those Torx bolts plus 3 16 millimeter flange nuts. And then the other thing you need to do is separate this connector from the seat, and then we're ready to lift it out. Okay, the seat unit's out of there now. I just stuck it on the other side. It's a pretty heavy unit, so I didn't want to carry it around, so that should be far enough out of our way. What we're trying to get to is this access panel under here is where the fuel pump is, and so now we got to remove some of this plastic here so that we can pull the carpet forward and tie it up out of the way. Okay, now I was able to pull this out from under the side panel here. There's a little decorator plate that goes on the threshold here, and you just pop that up. I use a little plastic pry tool I got at Harbor Freight. Then there's 2 screws that go in here that are in this bottom piece. It is latched underneath the side panel, but just by loosening it up, I'm able to get the carpet out, and that'll allow me to get this forward and pull the side. This is the wire that was attached to the seat. There is a slit in the carpet piece here for you to pull that wire out, so so that's pretty easy to get, just so you don't tear the connector off trying to thread it through the hole. Now next step is to get into this access panel. Okay, I've been working at this panel. There's sort of the cover is not screwed down, it's held in place with some sort of a putty or sealant. So I just keep using this plastic tool. I just kept working around the edge here, and now I've got so that it was loose, and I was able to peel that off. So you're going to want to make sure that you have an RTV sealant or something to put this back in. I'm going to clean up all this and vacuum it out. But you want to have some sort of sealant to put it back in, because you want a gas tight seal, because this is exposed to the outside, plus if there's any fuel vapors here, but you don't want to get any exhaust into your cabin. So make sure you have some sort of a sealant or caulking or some sort of material to put this back in. Okay, I've got that out of there. It's cleaned up. A couple things to note before we take everything apart, but there's this little triangle pointer on the pump unit, and then there's this slot or this groove here in the body. when you put it back together, you want to make sure that that's pointing to that slot. That makes sure that the pump unit is rotated the right way with the pickup and the level sensor in the right area of the tank. It's a couple things you want to know. And then these connectors on the fuel lines, they're a pinch and release type. I believe I'll have to play with that. This yellow tab may come out on this one, but and then you've got your power and fuel gauge pickup here that has to be disconnected. And then after that's out, then this locking ring assembly will spin that loose, and then the whole pump unit's free to come out. Okay, the next thing we want to do is just remove these fuel lines. They're on the side one here. There are 2 yellow dots on the side. Those actually will squeeze in. You squeeze those together and then pull up, and that removes that line. So these are the yellow pieces that you push in. This other one only has one in the front, but same thing. You push in on that and then pull up, and the fuel lines come free from the pump. The connector itself for the electrical has one of these flanges and a clip that goes over the flange. So that's all you need to do is pull that out and then slide the connector off. Anyways, so here's the new unit. Has a new gasket, new locking collar. Here's the pump unit. The float arm is separate. That just snaps into place. We'll show this all going in here shortly. Okay, we've got everything out. I got the hoses off. I've got the locking ring off as well. So I'm ready to take the pump out. I've got a container here nearby. You want to have something like that because this will be full of, it'll have fuel in the pump and it will leak, so you want to catch as much as you can. Also good to have a rag nearby to just take up anything that you can. So I've put the hoses to the side as best I can, fold the cable back, and now I'm ready to pull this out. I'll try and do it one-handed. If not, I'm going to have to stop the video and record it. But just going to rock it, work itself out. Then as the unit comes out, you're going to take this rubber O-ring, it's going to come with it, and enlarges your hole a little bit. And then as you work the unit out, I'm getting now to the point where the levers for the tank level, the fuel sensor is, and I've got it bent at an angle like so, and now I just sort of pull it out and I'm stuck. Like that. So, okay, now I've got it in the tank and in position. I've got my little pointer aiming at the groove in the tank body, and now I'm just going to put on the locking nut, hook up the hoses and the electrical, and then the rest of the process is just putting everything back together. Okay, I've got the new part in and the locking ring down. A couple pointers. Again, just a reminder again that the arrow needs to be pointing at that notch, just to make sure that if it's not right, your fuel level won't read accurately and your suction will be in the right position in the tank. The other thing, the locking ring, it's a very coarse thread, so you may want to make note of where the thread starts, and then where the thread starts on the body of the tank. Mine is over here, so it was helpful to push this piece all the way down, get the threads lined up before I push down and start turning, so that the threads would engage. And as you do that, you have to check all the way around this inside here to make sure the gaps is even. Otherwise, if it tends to cross thread and it's not sealing all the way. But basically, you want to make sure you push down this all the way down and make sure that the locking nut is on there tight. just to give you a gas tight seal. But those are a couple of pointers on getting that in and the locking nut back on. Okay, one last thing. So I got my hoses connected and my electrical connection is back in place. You also, I forgot to mention before, but the top of this unit has spring loaded, so it pushes down against the bottom of the tank. So you have to keep pushing that down while you put that locking nut on, and you want to push it all the way inside of that rubber O-ring seal, just to make sure everything's lined up and ready to seal and lock. So that's probably going to be the end of the video. Everything else here is just the reverse now. I'm going to start putting the carpet back in, back underneath the fairings here and threshold, and then bolt the seat back in. But that about wraps up the project. Hope you found this is helpful. Post any questions underneath the video here, and I will try to answer them as best I can. Thanks. One last thing, as I mentioned before, you're going to want to put the cover back on with some sort of a gasket or sealant caulking. I'm just using this RTV silicone gasket. Permatex is a good product. This is high temperature, so it's a little overkill for this application, but I have it, it's paid for, so I'm using this. But anyways, just put on a nice bead all the way around your cover. The cover was oriented in this position when I took it off, with this little ear pointing towards the driver's seat. It gives you, there's some indentations here. I think this is just higher over here where the hoses and wires are. And so basically you put that in place, give it a little twist to drive out any air bubbles. Make sure it's seated down there. You can rub in any of the extra, and that should do the trick to seal that back up. So that's it.